next, and then I very much hope we can get Senator Casey, who's been so patient, and we'll have to see who else is coming. Senator Daines.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Secretary Yellen, thanks for being here today. I do want to talk about inflation because that's what everybody's talking about back home. The chairman mentioned that in his opening remarks. It's truly remarkable what's happening with the inflationary hurricane force winds that are blowing today. It's in the minds of the people that I serve every day, Montanans, every day. They're seeing it at the gas pump, they see it at the grocery store, they see fertilizer prices for our farmers. The Biden administration has attributed, though, this broad-based rapid inflation that began last year to Putin. We've been attributed to greed, to triggered exploitation, to profiteering. The one thing we've not heard the administration say is that there may have been a contributing factor with the $1.9 trillion spending package that was passed in March of 2021 by this Congress, that we were calling out the concerns of the inflationary pressures it would create in the economy. Even former Obama administration officials, we saw that with Larry Summers, who was a director of National Economic Council under Obama, was also President Clinton's Secretary Treasurer. He warned this would spark inflation. He was exactly right. In fact, in a recent Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco research paper titled, quote, "Why is U.S. inflation higher than in other countries?" analysts confirmed the strong connection between heightened U.S. inflation and the government spending that was occurring earlier last year. A large portion of that spending was in that $1.9 trillion package. By the way, there was over $1 trillion of unspent COVID dollars coming into December of 2020. We warned everybody up here, you can't spend another $1.9 trillion because it will have inflationary effects. I've not heard this administration say anything about that, but I do want to allow you the opportunity to set that record straight. My question is, Secretary, do you agree with the San Francisco Fed that the nearly $2 trillion March spending package was a significant causal factor in the high, increasingly broad-based and accelerating inflation that we observed this past year?
Senator, we're seeing high inflation in almost all developed countries around the world, and they have very different fiscal policies. So it can't be the case that the bulk of the inflation that we're experiencing reflects the impact of the ARP.
So was it a causal factor, would you say, that $2 trillion when we had $1 trillion unspent? So do the quick math here. It's about $3 trillion that was put into this economy from December through March of 2021.
So I guess the way I see it is when President Biden was inaugurated, he inherited an economy with very high unemployment, and the Congressional Budget Office and other forecasters were envisioning that this could last for a very long time. And we had to address the possibility that this could be a downturn that would match the Great Recession. And so in designing a policy, there are various risks that need to be taken into account. Of course, inflation was one of them, but the overwhelming risk was that Americans would be scarred by a deep and long recession, and that they would lose the roofs over their heads and not be able to feed their families.
Right. Well, I respectfully, I mean, if there was a forecaster who was worried about the high unemployment rates, that forecast was, I think, massively off, and we're seeing now the biggest challenge, of course, is just families cannot afford to keep food and fuel.
Well, inflation is the number. There's no question. I don't disagree with you.
I want to talk about OECD for a moment here and China's compliance. We've seen China's recent history of non-compliance with international agreements. I'm concerned that China's not going to play by the rules with this agreement. Whether they'll ever play by the rules becomes a question. Here is the question: what makes you confident that China won't similarly stonewall efforts under the OECD agreement to determine whether Chinese companies are in compliance? And this gets back to the SEC issues and so forth.
So China agreed, was one of the 137 countries that agreed to comply with these rules, and we expect it to do so. But if it fails to do so, this agreement contains an enforcement mechanism that will allow the United States or any other country that has adopted the global minimum tax to impose taxes on China's companies that would be the same as if China had complied. So there is a tough enforcement mechanism in this deal, and if China doesn't comply, then the U.S. and other countries where Chinese firms do business will be allowed to collect the taxes on those Chinese firms, on their business outside China, that China hypothetically refuses to collect itself.
Time of the gentleman's expired. Senator Grassley.